Welcome to the Art of Growth. This is Jim Zartman. And today I'm continuing the conversation we started last week with Joel Hubbard and Hillary Kay as we start talking more about this theme of identity, belonging, and contribution. So much of what we talk about here, these are the three kind of pillars behind it. Identity is we work in the Enneagram and the best tools we can find, the formation of who we are, the belonging, the community setting that we are in, the people who we co-create our lives with, and our contribution, the unique gift and light that we have to bring to the world. These are the pillars that so much of our work here is built on. So we're going to talk about it. Before we do, the hub of all of our work is theartofgrowth.org. You can go there to take a free Enneagram test and instincts test. You can sign up for certification starting in January, or you can reach out to us about individual coaching or having us train in your organization. But for now, I'm going to switch it over because the mics were going and we were having a conversation. And even the randomness of that is part of belonging. So let's listen in. All right.
It's just my hands. I'm sweating.
Yeah.
But my
when the blood
hands
flow
are
does that. Oh, yeah,
causing-
yeah.
I do have gloves.
Well,
But that would
you
be
want to
weird.
get
I kind
gloves?
of want to get
You
them
can
out
get
of
your
my
gloves.
backpack. Can I get,
Get
my
your,
gloves
get
out
your
of my
gloves.
backpack?
Just
Can
set
you
the
type with
coffee
your
somewhere
gloves?
first.
Can you type with your gloves?
Yes, they have the sticky things. They're
Oh my
Of
gosh.
course they are.
Yeah. Texting gloves.
Of course they're
Because that
texting
way you can
gloves.
always be productive, right?
That's right. I do wish this was a video audience due to your pants.
I know. No kidding.
How would we describe, if we were trying to describe these pants to a listening audience? Well, first of all,
We'll do that as the start. Let's do that
we're,
in the podcast.
we're going. It's going right now.
It is? Okay.
We're recording. So how would we describe these pants that Hillary is working right now? The first and most obvious thing is they are giant bell bottoms, which are all the rage right now, apparently. I don't know if that's not true. Are they popular right now? Is this like a real thing? Does anyone?
so
Yeah.
they are
Okay.
having a resurgence. But it's more of the flare that is having more of their resurgence than the
Okay.
bell bottom.
Okay.
But I always have to take everything to the next level.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with the 60s and 70s anyways. So
And you
Yeah.
kind of missed the first time they came around in like 2000, 2001, the bell bottoms came
I did
back.
not miss that.
You
I had pairs. I was in 6th grade.
yeah, you okay. Gotcha.
And no, I actually had a pair of bell bottoms in 6th grade that were patchwork
Oh,
bell
nice.
bottoms. So again, taking
That's very
everything to the
70s,
next level.
yeah.
And
So you've been 70s.
I got
the
them at a
whole
math
way.
competition.
You've been
I
what?
can remember.
What?
Yes,
Oh, way to take the cool and make it nerdy.
I know. That's talking about identity. My identity has been screwed.
Well-
Never know who I am. Am I the smart
and
kid?
if
Am I
you
the
could
fashionista?
Right.
Am I the
Oh my
And
goodness.
if you could see her she's wearing gloves.
Yeah.
And-
Well,
not
wait, hang on.
fashionable gloves?
Hang on, we got to finish with the pants though, because
Okay.
they kind of have a. Have you seen those things where they pour like blue and white and dark blue paint over canvas, and then they just run a spoon through it to like swirl them all together? That's what's happening with the pants. I don't think I can do a
That's
better
a great
job.
visual.
That's a great.
Yeah,
I
that
think
is
it's a
that's a
very,
very
very
good
good visual. Yeah.
I'm very proud of what I just
It's
said.
like the blow art.
What?
The
Do tell.
No, I was like, okay, where's this going?
I'm listening.
Oh, I'm gonna start wheezing. It's like, no, you have a canvas, and then you have like, so you said like a dark blue, light blue,
White, yeah,
acrylic
yeah.
paint. It's
Acrylic
done
paint,
with
yeah,
acrylic
yeah.
paint, and then you take a drop of water
Yeah.
on each, and then you get like a big straw,
Uh-huh.
and you
Okay. All
blow
right.
it around.
That was funny. Right before she said that, she
Wow.
she started fanning herself with her gloved hands.
And they're not just gloves.
Oh.
These aren't fashion gloves. My
They're-
hands are just freezing.
Yeah. Just to let people into what it's like in Talkie Record Studios is it's all the walls are very thick because it is a soundproof studio room that we use, but it's either freezing or burning hot in here because it's cold outside. So I always have to run the air conditioner because as soon as you shut all the doors, it starts to get very hot. So when you have 3 people in this little room, it was 60 degrees when we started recording the last podcast, and the room is currently at 68.
Holy crap.
We went up 8 degrees recording the last episode, and now we're like starting the next episode. So Hillary was sweating, but her hands were freezing. And actually mine are too, because I went swimming in the ocean this morning and my hands are still freezing.
Joel, what's your hand check?
They're cool, but I'm comfortable.
I hate when people do this at the beginning of the podcast, but I really enjoy it.
No, these are my favorite type
You
of
like those
podcasts.
things?
So
Okay.
yeah, like
Okay.
most of the
We're just
podcasts that
gonna
I
leave all
listen
this
to
in.
have all of like this conversation, and that's how you fall in love with the podcast
Oh my gosh, I
host.
fast forward through all
I
of that
was,
stuff.
I do too.
Brand yourself, not your product, people.
We always have. Like, we
Oh,
just
man.
are ourselves, you
You
know, in
are.
all of
You
our
really are.
messy.
Yep.
Yeah. It's never been exactly a polished thing we do here.
No, we're not a well-oiled machine.
No,
by
but it's
any means.
intentional. Like, it's in a direction.
Yeah, I
We
mean,
have a
I think,
thing.
well, you said earlier, like, Joel, you just like to continue to develop and create as opposed to like, there's no landing place.
Yeah.
And that's true of me. And I wish I was more of the other, but I am getting comfortable with just being someone who he just continues to create. And that's what I love about our conversations is we get to do that.
Yeah. I actually think that this is why we've continued to have the influence that we have in this Enneagram world over the last 4 years now is so many things in the Enneagram. I feel like people are trying to propose theories that are fixed.
Mm.
And we've never landed on like, well, this is what this type looks like or this theory in the Enneagram. It's always been like, well, let's add this thing on. Let's try this thing out. And now let's go back to a few thousand people and like test it
Yeah.
and like ask
Yeah.
them what they think and then keep inviting voices in.
Yeah.
And so then we've tried to present people as like, well, this is a perspective is from all of these people. And then we're doing what we were doing in this series of podcasts right now today with this identity episode we just did. And then this one is we're going to go into belonging. But we're looking for it as we go. This is not
Yeah.
we're not trying to give people a landed thing.
Yeah.
So if someone's
is
like,
such
you
a
said this
gift.
4 years ago, and I'm like, so?
Oh, I'm sure I did. Yeah.
Yeah, sure I did.
And it's pretty bad now as I look back on it.
People are evolving.
Yeah.
Like, why are we trying to create a fixed anything when people are not fixed?
Yeah.
You will never be fixed. We're just trying to be in the flow of wisdom tradition, which is the flow of wisdom tradition is that things are always moving forward. And we are a part of them moving forward.
Yep.
That's it.
Yeah. And that's a better way of framing it than good, bad,
Yes. It's
know.
now.
Yeah.
It's
now.
this.
Yeah.
It's not good, bad, right, wrong.
Yeah.
It's this and it's now. And that's all that's
And
required
it's
of
so
us.
freeing. Like that,
Yeah.
Coming into this, that's, I think, what attracted me to the art of growth in general is because what's comfortable for me is the fixed.
Sure.
And there has been such freedom
Hmm.
and like, oh, wait, I can change my mind.
Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah.
Right.
That's wonderful. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah,
You
yeah.
know?
Right. Yeah. And so Hillary is joining us for this series of podcasts. We didn't even say this in the last one because we just jumped right in. She flew up here because we do some corporate work together and we were doing some corporate filming, which you may have seen on Instagram, Art of Growth. Go follow it. Yes, sir. We were showing when we were filming, but now we're in these series of conversations that we wanted to share because these are the conversations that we've been having over dinner and lunch as we've been in between shoots and breaks. And
Yeah, that's the
stuff
great
like
thing
that.
about
So-
this. It's like it's not like we show up here and we're like, okay, we're gonna be serious now. We're gonna actually talk about this.
Yeah.
This is a continuation of life. I mean, we talk about our families. We talk about the difficulties the joys we're having.
Yeah.
And then we talk about this stuff because it's all life. It's
Yeah.
all part of it.
Yeah. And then we record it and then you guys get to
Yeah,
enjoy it, which is awesome. I also want to point out, because we've been talking a lot about the community, that these are the kinds of conversations that they're having
Yep.
at the Art of Growth community. And they're having those with each other because these are the kinds of conversations that I think matter. And so these
Yeah.
are the kinds of conversations we want to have. This is why we record them. This is why we share them.
Yeah.
Not because our ideas are the best, but we think the subject is the right thing to be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the act of engaging in these conversations about real things.
Yeah.
And doing that with others.
Yeah.
I think that's what I keep hearing from people that are part of the community, and it's amazing what I'm hearing coming out of that because it's what we aspire to, what we want, which is a sense of sharing our lives and walking through life with other witnesses.
Mm.
You know, I remember this line from a movie. It was like, we're one in many billions of people, and to have others witness our lives
Mhm.
is like one of the greatest gifts, that
Yeah.
you're not alone. You're not just lost in the sea of people. And
Yeah.
I think it's just a beautiful thing that we get to
Yeah.
have.
So let's pick up where we left off You had
Yeah.
shared a story about getting up to speak and what was going through your head right before.
Yeah, right beforehand, I had and I had to put these into categories because I'm like, what am I feeling here? Because it's a sense of insecurity, and I could feel it, but it masquerades sometimes as like anxiety or like a sense of fidgetiness or just hyperactivity. And so I could feel my hyperness and I could feel it coming up, and I knew that it was a quality I didn't like. It wasn't something really good. And so I dove a little bit more deeply, and 3 words came up, and it was, oh yeah, I feel the sense of the need for significance, the need to be liked, the need to impress. And those 3 things were functioning within me. I knew that if
but
I
say
didn't,
you were experiencing them as anxiety. I think that's
Yeah.
super important for people to hear, because it's like some people might just notice the anxiety, but you're then going, I'm actually naming the deeper level of this.
Yeah. What am I anxious about? Like, what's the anxiety? What is it? It's like, so what? I'm about to
Yeah.
speak and I haven't spoken in a while in front of a group of people. Oh, okay, so what? What is it that is happening underneath for me? And because I've been practicing this, I was able to more quickly get there. I wouldn't have definitely would have never even tuned into this, a bunch of years back. But I was able to see it. And I know the personality that emerges from that space because I've seen that person many times. And it's an aspect of me. It's not like this is not the real me. It is a part of who I am, but it's a part of who I am that functions from that space of anxiety, from feeling insecure about wanting to be liked, but not sure that I will be, wanting to impress, because that means that then I will be, I don't know, it meets that existential hole, that is hard to name.
But also not wanting to compromise on your ideas and your
Oh gosh,
you
no.
show up.
No.
That piece too, yeah.
So I'm at war with myself because it's like I can't lie. I don't want to lie
Right.
about things. I don't want to, just because I want to be liked. So there's all that's happening. And then as a good old 7 or head type, I try to persuade people, to my side. And so there's a loss of a sense of being with people in the journey of discovery. And it's not that everybody wants that journey. It's not that everybody is going to go, oh yeah, let's go along with your journey as you present something to us. People do have their own little systems of thought that they would like to have that confirmed, their bias confirmed. So all that to say, I got up and I knew the personality that would emerge if I just went with it. And so I just said at the beginning, look, we have mirror neurons. Yours want to synchronize with mine want to synchronize with yours. And I have this ego that has this thing happening. And so I just said it to the people. And oftentimes just saying things like that, just putting it out there reduces its power. I think anything that's sort of hidden has its power over us. But once it's out and exposed and, put out there, there's a risk, a high risk, sure, because then now people will look at me differently, right? That's what my internal voice says.
Yeah.
And I risk that, and that can be true. There are people who will go, oh, I was looking for some person who's like a messiah figure, some person with all the wisdom, a sage figure. And I come up and I'm like, no, I'm going to put my stuff out there right away. But boy, did it give me a permission then to go, who's the person, who's the Joel that I want to be in this moment? And I was able to walk more in that. And that is more of a with kind of energy. We've talked about that in the stances. And I could totally feel that stance activating. Oh, man. Like in the past, I wouldn't have known this, but I was like, oh, there it is. Yep. The againstness was starting to show up. And so I'm like, no, I'm not going to go with the againstness. And mine doesn't show up in a direct way like a type 8 would. It shows up much more in the argumentative. Like it's I'm proposing an argument. I'm starting to go in the persuading and having more proofs and evidence and stuff, instead of like, we're having a conversation here. I'm here to just do this with you. So that's the thing that I think I would have walked out of that had I gone in my the person that emerges from the anxiety. I would have tried to feel loved, accepted through the process of impressing. And I wouldn't have had that sense of belonging, not deeply. It would have been a superficial sort of thing. Yeah. And this one, I walked out of there feeling a deep sense of satisfaction and belonging. And I went home and I was at peace. It was a great, great, great feeling. And one that I want to keep walking out because I know myself all too well that in a bad day, I won't be there. And I want to say that because many of us we'd like to be able to live there consistently. But to my mind, I look at life now as much more of a practice, which means some days I'm going to get it. Some days I won't. The ego will be far too strong and I won't be able to fight it. But when I can, and I felt like I had the agency, the power to do so, I was able to kind of pick that day I choose to walk in this.
But what I love about what you just said is it was in a moment where you made a decision. You recognized, right? So there's an intention.
Yeah.
There was observation. Then there was intention of who you wanted to show up to be. Showing up and then respecting it and liking yourself in that space.
Yeah.
And I think those are all these components that lead to a sense of I belong to myself.
Yeah.
And now because I've been able to do this, I've actually created a sense of belonging for others.
Yes. Yeah.
In that space and with them.
Yeah.
So we're talking about belonging. I think that really sets the stage of some of the necessary components to experience the belonging bridge of belonging to self and to others.
I work on this a lot with clients who are in a self-mastery journey. You know how we talked about in the last episode, they know their starting point, but they don't want to stay there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I work through this. It's a practice formed in the nonviolent communication series of thought, but it's called OFNR, observation, feeling, need, request.
Say it again.
Observation, feeling, need, and request.
Got it.
So what you did was you observed. I had this observation of myself, and then you identified the feeling. You had those 3 feelings that you identified. Then you were able to go to, what does this mean I need? And then you requested it of yourself. So that request can be, I can request it of myself or I can request it of others. And I think that goes to the belonging, right? Belonging to self, belonging to others.
Listen, I've literally done that. I've literally gone up and said, you know what I need right now? I need you to like me.
Yeah.
I said that to one audience and they all laughed because I did it with a sort of I'm not going to demand it from you.
Yeah.
But I'm going to put my stuff out there. And the funny thing was they all laughed.
Yeah.
And they were clapping and we love you. And there was what happened was the funny thing about it is that when you can be okay with yourself, even when you're okay with the truth of yourself that, but without putting it on everybody else to fix or on yourself to feel like it's my fault, my responsibility, you just put a lightness around that and just, it's funny how the community just goes, cool. It gives them, exactly like you said, Jim, it gives them permission. Oh, I can belong to myself too.
Yeah.
And it creates an atmosphere of belonging. Yeah.
Oh, freedom is contagious in that way.
And authenticity. Yeah. What you did was authentic.
Yeah.
And that is also contagious.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. We talk about this in group coaching. Sometimes we would talk about someone had to break the wall of vulnerability, but it can't be me as the leader. So someone else has to sort of has to do it first. As a speaker, I think you can do it. But when you're in a group setting and if you're the leader, someone else actually has to do that in order to get that thing going. But we're going to go down this direction of talking about the practice of belonging. But I think that is a fantastic example of where we're going to talk about. But I think we have to back up for a second and deal with sort of the false belonging first.
Yes, that's
for
huge.
Sure.
So this is a big issue right now. I think we see this a lot in the divisiveness of politics and of everything else, that there's almost when I don't have a real sense of belonging to myself and to others, almost like ego construction. So it looks very much like egoic construction. This is who I am. This is who I have to be. I'm creating this curated image and putting it on. Belonging can be the same thing. So I over-identify with a particular group, and my sense of belonging comes from confirmation bias. Who agrees with me and finding things that agree with me. And this is constructed as well. Good identity is constructed, but it doesn't have a very holistic view of it. And I do see a lot of this right now that really bothers me, especially in technology culture and attention getting with social media and just all this noise. It's it's not belonging. It's proxy belonging. It's confirmation bias belonging. It's I don't know how to actually belong to myself or others. Likes are not belonging.
Huh.
It's not. It's not belonging. It's not like
Did that touch
affirmation
close to home, my friend.
Affirmation in a certain way is not like, that's not real belonging.
Yeah.
And I think
That's gratification.
yeah, it's gratification.
What's gratification?
It's gratification that confirmation bias, that's whatever. That's not belonging. That's gratification. That's instant gratification. And that's,
What does that do? What does the instant gratification do for you? And you think maybe for
I think
some others?
it's almost like endorphins. Like it's like it gives like this charge of like, ooh, they like that. They like me. I'll do it again. Like it's like, do.
I mean, obviously it works, right? Because that's why we do it. That's why people do it. It's not like if it didn't work, people wouldn't keep doing it. Well, but it works at a somewhat of a superficial level. It's like getting calories from candy as opposed to getting calories from real food, right? It still gives you calories. Yeah.
Well, there's certain benefits you get when you belong to a certain group. So I'm going to use this social media thing, like getting the like. Like once you hit a certain number of followers, you are now a micro influencer, and there's certain benefits to getting to being a micro.
There's even a term for that. There's a name for it. It's like affirming. Yeah.
Yeah, and then ooh, I'm a micro influencer. That is my identity. I belong in this social media
maybe
world.
Maybe one day.
Yes, maybe one day I'll be a macro influencer. And then I'll get real big deal. You know, like and that's just a microcosm. Like social media is a microcosm of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
There's even a whole thing in the area of causes that happen too. Like people that are into causes. It's like I have to have a cause and I have to have something that I'm.
And causes are good.
Oh, absolutely.
I think this is
important.
This is the problem about about false belonging is because sometimes false belonging takes on the form of something good, like a cause, a charity, or something like that. Yeah. But it's still not actually doing the thing.
Yeah.
It's like the awareness months for me. So I have a lot of things I could do awareness for. And, you know, like, for example, October, Down Syndrome Awareness Month. I have a child with Down syndrome, and every mom on the face of the earth who has a kid with Down syndrome is posting about this month. And it's like this, look at me, my kid is part of my identity. And that's for the false identity. And it becomes, and this is what I see in a lot of those groups, is it's not like, hi, I'm a mom, my son is Lincoln. It's, hi, I have a son with Down syndrome. I'm his mom. Like it's like this.
It's flipped.
It's flipped. And that becomes, and then you can belong to that group. Like it goes from, this is a community that I do qualify to be in.
Do you suppose that that's part of the reason why it is hard for people to leave groups, whether they are groups like this, like the awareness ones, or groups of like grief groups, or I was thinking of recovery groups as well. Yeah. It is very difficult to leave them because in some sense, you've gotten to a place where you are now on the inside because you've processed enough grief, or you've gotten to a certain stage of recovery. You've gotten a number of months or years under your belt, and now you feel really deeply connected to this group. Mm-hmm. And for you to have anything beyond that would threaten the loss of that.
Yeah. Well, I just heard a story about that of someone who's just like that had been sober so long that it was really hard for them to like create like the next iteration because it was always the thing I'm not anymore.
Yeah.
And they were really having a hard time constructing the thing that I am next. And like this goes back a bit to the identity conversation, but I think part of this false belonging thing is something you were talking about is I think both cancel culture and virtue signaling culture are both aspects of false belonging.
Oh.
Or do they empower false belonging, not necessarily?
Yeah, they empower it. That's right.
Yeah.
They aren't because in and of themselves, like a lot of times, like I said, it can be a good thing.
Yeah, there's a good in it.
There's a good in it, right?
Yeah.
But it can be used.
Yeah, as another
way.
Boy, aren't we clever as human beings, finding all kinds of ways to belong without actually coming into the sort of vulnerability of who we are. But I was thinking about identity in that same way. So we belonged for a while. We as a bunch of us were helping refugee families. Another time we were helping bring awareness to human trafficking, and we were very deeply involved in all that. Mm-hmm. But I would run into people who were saying, I feel like I'm stuck in this victim role. as a survivor.
Yeah.
And that if I do anything beyond that, that I may lose what I have, or that I literally had a survivor say that to me. Like, I'd like to be more than this.
Yeah.
I'm afraid to, because that may mean that I'm no longer part of this group.
Right.
And whether that's true or not true, it spoke to an inner experience that we have, is that sometimes in those circles, you do develop this sense of belonging. And if you emerge past it, or you grow beyond that in some sense, or you have a different thing that you feel like is yours to do, that it threatens that sense of belonging. And so we can develop and stay in groups for that sense of belonging, even when we no longer fit there, or it is no longer our thing to do or to be a part of, because it's such a powerful need within us.
I've done that. I stayed where I no longer belonged so that I wouldn't lose a sense of belonging. I've 100% done that.
100%.
Me too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Because that was my false version. And so I was like, I could be in a place where I'm both here and I'm not. So I'm here, but I'm in conflict, and I'll create kind of problems because I think there's some egoic place that was just like, I'm going to superimpose my will on this thing so that it becomes a place that I can belong again.
Yeah. That's funny.
Oh, my word.
Yeah.
Oh, it was so bad. Yeah. But I've seen myself do every version of these. So when we're talking about these senses of false belonging, I don't have a bite in my voice because I'm talking about anyone else. Like, this is all like, I've had to make peace with my own evolution, and I've had to make peace with my own journey, and being like, I've done at least all of these at some point in time.
Oh, me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm like, am I doing something like this now?
Right now? Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure I am.
Right?
I don't want to find it though.
Well, I don't think
if you see it, don't let me know.
Right? Yeah. I actually don't think this is a problem with it in its initial stages. I think it's that, once again, we get fixed and we stay when growth is pushing us upward and outward.
Yeah.
And I think that's the key point of belonging not being a fixed, like, these are the 5 ingredients to belonging that are really not practiced ingredients, or ingredients in the sense of these are practices, but ingredients in the sense of these are static positions you adopt in order to have this sense of belonging. Belonging is movement and it's growth. And so as you belong, you continue to belong and you choose to belong. And I think that's a different practice
interesting.
than it
Choosing
is
to belong.
Yeah.
Is belonging a choice?
I think when it comes to the first part, so he was talking about the two components, the belonging to self and the belonging to others. I think true belonging has to begin with the belonging to self, and that has to be a choice. Hey, so I needed to pop into the middle of this episode to remind you that if you are wanting to use the Enneagram more in your own life, become more proficient in it, and would like to learn from us about how to do that, the Art of Growth certification course is starting this January 2023 and will run for 12 weeks. And you can sign up for that at theartofgrowth.org under the classes and events section. So go to our website and sign up and become certified with us before it's too late. All right, back to the show, folks. True belonging has to begin with the belonging to self, and that has to be a choice.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of agency and there's a lot of things that you don't have control of. I don't think you have control over being wounded. Because when you're wounded, it does thrust you into a type of exile. That's not something you have control of. You have that experience. It hurts like hell. Yeah. Your ego is sophisticated and smart and there for a reason, and it protects you. And so what it does is certain parts of you, certain experiences are exiled. For me, it's more about the participation with what is happening in the given moment. So you participate with, okay, there's an exile. So I'm aware of what's happening in me. There's a part of me that's going into exile. To what degree can I stay present to that, so that it doesn't fall into the hiddenness and stay there for too long? Because with the exile, there's always the return. And so, that part has been wounded in me, and it's wounded right now. And as I participate with the wounding, I think it accelerates the healing. And the healing takes place, and then there's a return of some kind. And you're not in control of making the return happen, but you participate with the return.
And that's the choice.
And that's the choice. I think that's exactly. I think that's the choice. I don't think choices are, I can fake my because then it turns into faking your belonging. I think you can feel ousted by a group of people, and you have literally been ousted by a group of people. Yeah. You no longer belong. No matter how you want to language it, you don't belong. Totally. You feel that. But I think that the sort of belonging at that point turns much more inwardly to the self, but I still belong to me. And then there's a belonging to others that then, again, isn't something you control entirely. But I think as you create your own sense of belonging as to the best you can, you then, I think, create a sense where other people around you can start to feel like that as well. Like if you belong to yourself, then maybe I can belong to me. And you can create many environments where belonging, happens. I think it becomes almost intoxicating to other people when they taste of that. Like, wow, you belong to yourself. Meaning you're talking about your exiled parts. It's not like the exiled parts are all there in a return in perfect form and that you're in the ideal stage. It's like I'm having a conversation. Oh, yeah, I've had these parts that have been deeply wounded. That openness gives a sense of, I'm merciful and compassionate to myself. And I think that's the belonging that starts to happen internally for yourself that other people are drawn to. It gives them permission to also do the same.
Yeah.
Is it like the release of shame?
Oh, I think that's a huge part of it. I believe that shame is another way that the ego chooses to deal with painful experiences without actually participating in it. It's a protective thing. Again, it's not a bad thing. The ego is not a bad thing. It's there to protect you, but to recognize that that's what it's doing. Everything is awareness. It's an alarm bell, and it's about being aware. It's an alarm bell. Ooh, I've been wounded. Ooh, I'm closing up. But you see, when we're doing that means we're aware, as opposed to not aware, which then happens by itself. And then there's no participation. There's no agency. It's happening. And then you don't know when the return is ever going to happen because you're not even aware of what's happening. You're not having that conversation with the pain, the event.
Yeah, it's only the people who have gotten free who can really show you what it's like. Like, have you ever been around someone who is just utterly honest, utterly comfortable with themselves, utterly comfortable with their own failures, their own past, and you talk to them and there's just like, there's no BS about that. It's just all right there. It's all right up front.
Yeah.
They are like the most liberating people I have ever been around. They are the people who inspire me the most. It's not because they're not a mess. It's just they're honest about it. Yeah. When people aren't a mess, I don't trust them, honestly.
Yeah.
Like I don't. I have very low trust for people who are like, I don't have any idea what's wrong with you.
Yeah.
If I don't know what's wrong with you, I don't actually trust you. Like I actually have to know like that you're a human being, that we are all magnificent monsters, as my friend Laura McCowan says, that the line of good and evil runs down the center of all of us. But the people who are just blatantly honest about all that, like that is the people who I find liberating. They set you free. And that to me, it gives me a real sense of belonging.
But it has to be done a certain way.
Yeah.
Because there's times where I have been harsh on myself. That does not create a sense of belonging internally, nor does it create a sense of belonging for people around me who are hearing me beat on myself.
But it's not the beating on the self for sure.
Right. And I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but I'm saying I'm recognizing, I've watched it in myself where I've been harsh on myself.
Yeah.
And I've watched the atmosphere it creates. And it's like, that's ugly. That's not a good atmosphere. Right. And it doesn't create an invitation to actually state things plainly. Yep, that's me. Yep, I did that. I own the full responsibility of that.
Yeah.
But without shame. Yeah. With even a little bit of lightness and compassion and gentleness and laughter and playfulness and all of those things that come in, it's remarkable how the power of that thing dissipates. Because again, I think the shaming away is part of the participating with the exile in the wrong way, where you're like, oh, I've been hurt. Now I'm going to really exile that part from me because I never want to feel that again. Instead of, well, okay, I've been hurt. Yeah. But I welcome that painful part. I welcome you. Yeah. Oh, that shame, the thing I'm embarrassed about. Yeah. Yeah. I welcome you. Yeah. I welcome you. I welcome you to be here. you and I were joking about the competitiveness that we shared like yesterday, and like how losing a game is like the end of yourself. Like you feel useless, worthless, all these other things. It's so stupid, but that's what it feels like. And I lost a game recently to someone I shouldn't have lost to. And I lost the game, and I was feeling so angry with myself at that moment. And I thought, can I practice this belonging thing? It was really hard, very hard, because I recognized in myself, I don't want to right now. I am so mad for losing this game. I do not want to do that.
Yeah.
But I did it. I did it by habit, because one of the things I've recognized is that you can't change your feelings, nor can you change your thoughts all the time. Sometimes you can, but you can't always do it.
Right.
But you can change your behavior. You have much more agency over how you're going to act than how you feel sometimes.
Right.
So I was like, okay, by act, I'm going to smile. I'm going to congratulate the player for beating me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to say, good game. And I'm going to force myself to stay present, awkwardly, even if that's what it means, to him and to the game. And I did. Now, I didn't feel great, but the pain of that loss didn't carry on like it sometimes does. Oh, well, like it always does if I lose. And I practice this because I know this is the way to continue to participate with the parts that have been exiled in the past, whatever past stories I have around the competition thing. Mm-hmm. I don't need to know those right now. What I need to do is to say, you belong, Joel. That pain, that sense of loss of value, worth, whatever it is that you feel, you belong.
Yeah.
And welcome all that with you. And now, act like you're not in exile. That means smile, go back to playing, and go back to enjoying this friendship. And in doing that, it's an exercise in belonging. My hope is that it actually starts to change some things about my game and my play. It's not there yet. but I think that the practice of belonging is just as important as, not just as important, it's important as a means to continuing that, developing that sense of belonging.
Yeah, I think one of my practices of belonging is telling myself this belongs. When I'm feeling something or I don't like something that comes up in
this
me.
This belongs, yeah.
I just say this belongs.
Yeah.
Because like you said, I can't change my thought or my feeling, but I can attempt to exile that feeling, or I can tell that feeling that it belongs.
Yeah,
and
that's good.
I can change the nature of my relationship with it. And when I change the nature of my relationship with it, I have a different experience of it. And then it's not, I'm less at war with myself.
Yeah, that's so
because
well put.
This is a post I made one day, and I don't still understand it totally, but I'm trying to. And it said, and when I made peace with myself, I had no enemies left.
I was just thinking that. I'm so glad you went there, because I was literally just thinking that my relationship can either be one of antipathy, like it's my enemy, the part of me that I don't like, or it's a friend. So good.
Yeah, it's so interesting as I'm listening to both of your experiences in practicing belonging. I'm listening and I'm trying to find something that I feel like how I practice belonging. And I don't know if I have one.
I want to ask you about a specific moment, though, because you and I were talking about this in the car the other night, where it was just kind of like the thing that makes people that like us pull away from certain energies is when it feels like there's try.
Yeah.
And we had talked about, I was like, when I first met you, like I had that experience. I said, but then it did shift. So how did that shift? Because something in that, you did do it. Maybe you have to name it, learning how to name it. But I saw you do something in that space.
So as a 3, I didn't used to be aware when I tried to blend in, like when I used to try to blend into situations, right? And be who they needed me to be. So now when I realize I'm trying to be who I think these people need me to be, that is my alarm bell.
Oh, interesting.
And I'm like, oh, whoa.
And what do you do?
Withdraw. Like, it's like I pause any future interaction. I pause any future interaction with that person.
Okay.
Or with that group and think, what were my intentions behind wanting to shapeshift into who I think they need me to be? What were my intentions? Were they good intentions? Were they self-serving intentions? Were they neutral intentions? And then from there, then I'm like, okay, do I want to belong with these people?
Yeah.
But that's really good for you because it's do I want?
Yeah.
Right.
What, and this goes back to what I said on the last episode, is it was around that time where I asked myself, who do I want to be?
Mm.
And I couldn't see her. I could feel her. And in that moment, that was in that same kind of week of from the first time I had that met you guys and everything. And it was like, no, like I think I started trying. I put that try out because I felt who I wanted to be and I didn't want to let this go. And so it was my coping mechanism. Let me be who they need me to be because I can't lose this feeling. I know this is the feeling that I want, but it was that recognition of that caused me to then not try, just keep experiencing the feeling.
I like how you said I couldn't see her, but I could feel her. And
I still can't. I still can't see her.
Is that because the seeing for you is more fixed, more wooden, more...
Yeah, because I can see past Hillary. Clear.
Yeah.
I can see past Hillary in multiple stages, and it is literally like a different human.
Yeah, for sure.
I can't see my future human. I do not know, but I know how I want to feel.
Yeah.
In that moment.
Yeah.
I know that feeling of belonging to myself.
Yeah.
I don't know what it looks like, but I know what it feels like.
I relate to that. I don't know what the future version, but it's like I know that I'm creating it by this action.
Well, we talked about this in Driven to Drawn. There's a sense at which internally there's a certain energetic quality, certain emotions that are, this is the me that I like, along with certain behaviors. This is the me that I like. And I think that that's not always easy to define. Like specifically as what does this look like in very wooden form or structure, but it's more of like a disposition. I like who I am when I'm acting this way, when I'm feeling this way, when I'm moving this way, and that's what I want more of.
Yeah. Because I think what you did in that space, Hillary, it is that's exactly the practice of belonging.
Yeah.
Because when we were talking, the conversation before we ever started recording the previous episode even, we were talking about like, what kind of space are we creating between us? So there's like the internal world, and then there's the external world. And belonging is the overlapping spheres between the internal and the external. It's the space between two people. And what kind of energy are we bringing into that space of belonging? Because, well, like, frankly, we've met other people who's wanted to do stuff with the art of growth that are not sitting here, and that we got off calls with, and we looked at each other and we're just like, meh. Because I think there's that try piece there, and it's kind of like, oh, they're not making that shift of like, how can you belong with anyone else if you don't also belong to yourself? And then being willing to do that dance with someone else. It's that dance of that space between.
Yeah.
And I always think about like, what is the energy of the space between? Because like when I met Joel, like I think of that John O'Donohue quote where he says that like friendship is not created. All friendship is an act of recognition. It's the recognition of like, oh, we can dance in this space together. And I think that is something we're always kind of trying to sort of figure out in true belonging. Like I can go and I can do your dance in all those different like proxy fulfillment things we were talking about. But can I actually come into this space and can we create that dance? Can we create that flow? Can I be me in front of you is a question that I always have when it comes to belonging.
Because that is a question that is kind of has two directions to it. One is, can I be me in front of you and be happy with myself even if you don't like what you just saw? There's that. And then there's, can I be me with you and you actually be able to handle that, or is that going to be too much for you?
Yes. Well, the question is like, does it have to be pulled back to the belonging of self, or can it be expanded into the belonging of us?
Well, and that's the distinction between community and the self, right? Because
Yes.
in that sense, you have a better, I think, sense of community, the separation between the two and the blending of the two.
Yeah.
Because too much of the time in the early stages, there is no distinction between how you perceive me and how I perceive me. And then there's a distinction that begins to take place because it's, wait, how do I perceive me? Not just based on how you perceive me.
Yeah, and I think to me it's the distinction between, I want them to like me, but I don't need them to like me. That's when I know I belong to
That's
myself
when you know
in
that
a
you belong to
situation.
yourself. Yeah.
I always think of this really weird phrase that Jesus uses in one of the Gospels where he's sending out the disciples to like go do a mission thing. And he's talking about when you go to a town and he says, if you are welcomed, let your peace rest upon it. And if you are not welcomed, let your peace return to you. It's almost like if you belong, if you're welcomed, like your belonging extends out into these group of these other people. And if it's not welcomed, if they're like, no,
okay, that will segue
you.
into the contribution piece.
Okay.
All of this, by the way, and we're saying this earlier, all of this is so connected to each other. The belonging to self, the belonging to community, the belonging to your contribution, your light, the thing that you're to put out there into the world. Like all of that is so deeply connected to each other.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that there's a sense where you do recognize that my belonging was very much based upon how you saw me and how you and whether you accepted me or didn't accept me, to then a shifting, and that's more true for some types for sure than it is for others. And then there's a sense of, can you handle me as I am?
Mm.
And, can I be authentic with you? Can I be real with you?
Mm-hmm.
And can you take that in and be okay with it?
Yeah.
And I believe that there's some of which we have falsely made decisions based on, they couldn't handle me. When it was like, well, is that really true?
Oh, interesting.
Or was it that you couldn't handle their reaction to you and therefore you believed them to be pushing you away?
Yep.
Yeah, that's very good.
So you walked away and you exiled your own self.
Yep.
Got it. Interesting.
Because it's a dual thing. Like, I have to be able to accept how you respond to me. That's part of belonging.
Yeah.
Because if I say, well, I need you to accept who I am as I am, it's like I need you to accept me as I am without me having to deal with how you experience me and your own reactions to that. So I dehumanize you in that sense because you have to be able to be some perfectly accepting of who I am without me accepting who you are and how you respond to that.
Yeah.
So I think that's a conversation for sure because there's some in which you have to teach people like, okay, so this part here, I just need you to not criticize or I just need you to not fix me right now and just like be with me in this space. That would serve me well.
Mm.
And then you're creating and crafting, I think, an environment for belonging when we do that. So I think it's not this all or nothing. Like you've got to accept all of me as I am.
Yeah.
Or I have to learn to accept all of me as I am. I think that there's a conversation at which we say, yeah, I know. So my intensity might be hard for you. I get that. And so I do need to understand how to do this better within relationship to you.
I just think about how there's certain people in my life, and I've had, so many amazing friends throughout my life where it's just kind of like, I know that no matter what I bring, it's welcomed, it's honored. They're not like, no matter what, we accept you, because they'll challenge me too. They'll like push back, they'll challenge me, they'll call me to a higher standard. But they have my best at heart. Like that's just the way they welcome.
Yeah.
But I also, as you're saying, like I have to welcome like your response to me. I think about other friendships where the intimacy has been capped because we're totally fine as long as we don't go there.
As long as we don't go there. Yeah.
As long as we don't go to that thing.
Yeah.
I can feel the edges of the intimacy.
For sure.
It's like we can't go because not all of me is welcome here.
Mm-hmm.
So there's like some sense of belonging in all of these ways, or we have a history together. We've known each other for a long time, but don't go there.
Mm-hmm.
Don't tell me this new thing you're thinking about or whatever. So I think when it comes to like full belonging, when I picture that idea, I picture very specific situations where I know where it's like, you have my best at heart. You welcome anything I bring. You're willing to challenge me. But like all of that is in play. That's what feels like the most holistic experience of belonging to me.
Mm-hmm.
I've definitely experienced lots of environments of partial belonging. But when I think of like whole belonging, it's just kind of like, okay.
Yeah, but even Abby has done, your wife has said things like, yeah, that conversation, you need to have that with someone else.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like in that sense, it's like, okay, that's a part of you, but it's a part of you that she is just not, it's not her thing. She's not.
Well, that's like a thing that I'm interested in. It's just kind of like I can exhaust anyone with all of my interests. That's a very different thing than like, that's
but
just
if you
my
were
interests.
narcissistic, you would be like, you need to be able to handle all of that, right?
The belonging has, when I think of that, when I was referring to, is more kind of like on the personal front, like who I am as a person. Not so much like, can you keep up with all the things I'm interested in? I'm not like a head type in that way. Like, I don't really care if you're interested in what I'm interested in.
As a head type for me, that would be a point of where I would not feel that belonging, right? So, and I think it's just awareness around like, there are things that I'm interested in that Patty, my wife, is not interested in.
Yeah, of course.
And if I bring that to her, and I can exhaust her within 10 minutes of talking about that thing that I'm deeply interested in.
Right.
And then I can feel like, oh, she doesn't accept who I am because I definitely identify with my thoughts.
Yeah.
And so then what happens then? Well, I think it's part of the conversation of that's an area where you just can't go. So to what degree can I have to understand that my impact based upon my interests has an impact on you, and can I accept that? And I think that's the negotiation between people, and not just sort of like an all or nothing. Like, sorry, you can't accept the entirety of who I am, and therefore I don't feel belonging, and therefore I need to move on.
But that's what I mean about that space between that you create with someone.
Yeah.
Because like the space that I create between Abby and I is very different than the space I create between us. Like Joel and I, we can go on ideas and all this stuff. Like from day one, I've always been amazed that there's people that want to listen to us do that. Like, I
know, right?
It's fascinating. But then like my surfing space, like that I have all of those like conversations with my friend Ryan. We've created all this space between like music and surfing. And then I have like my jujitsu buddies over here. And I have my friends that I talk to about spiritual stuff like over here. And it's like we all create this amazing space of belonging between us. But like I'm not trying to bring that thing over there into like this circle of belonging, because I think belonging is really about, can we create an overlapping circle between the two of us? It's not like every single thing, but it's like, I think belonging is like, can we create a really good space here that we both want to be in?
Yeah. Well, and I think that's the difference between having a need to have the entirety of who we are loved and accepted by everybody. And I think that's an insecure place where that's sort of like, I need that affirmation. I need that approval. I need something to feel okay with me. And then there's a movement more towards, I'm okay with me. So then I can show up in different circles and parts of me I can laugh about, like, oh yeah, you have zero tolerance for that. Gotcha. No problem. Right.
Yeah.
And so then I'm not putting all the weight of belonging externally to myself. Like I have to belong to an environment that has created a belonging environment. And we run into this where people are literally, some corporations are asking and have asked, like, how do you create belonging? And whose responsibility? I literally got asked this by some person in a corporation that we recently worked with, was whose responsibility is it to create that sense of belonging?
We talked about that.
Oh, that's a big one.
Yeah. We actually, I think we talked about that on the last podcast that I was on with you guys back in July, that responsibility. And we came down to, honestly, like it starts with personal responsibility.
Yeah.
Starts with personal belonging.
It starts with personal responsibility.
And how much am I outsourcing?
Yeah.
Oh, how much am I outsourcing is, I think is the whole thing around false belonging is it's outsourced. And so much of like true belonging, it's resourced. Like it comes from here. It comes from who I naturally am. And then it's that act of recognition that like creating that
and it's
space.
a gift we give to each other.
It's a gift. Yes. The gift of belonging.
Yeah.
What's, the gift of belonging? I think, what does that mean? Like,
well, what we create, we talked about the vulnerability space where you create that's a gift. If I'm vulnerable, if I'm gracious to myself, I create, and then I invite other people into that space and other people invite me into that space. Like the non-judgment, right? How many times has it been said to you, you both like, wow, I feel like you didn't judge me in this space. Like, like you could have so easily done that and you didn't do it. And what does that do for them? Makes them feel like they belong, right? It's like that part of them belongs.
Yeah. And I
in the
think
conversation.
sometimes, I think in an ideal world, you want to start with that internal belonging first and then you belong to others. But I think sometimes it takes someone else saying,
for sure.
like, not judging you
Yeah.
and feeling belonging externally. That's how it happened for me.
And then maybe I can not judge myself.
Yes. And then maybe I cannot judge myself. Then, you are so honest. Oh my gosh.
Maybe I can.
I can maybe be honest too and accept responsibility. And I mean, that definitely is my belonging journey, is once I was able to share all my crap and share it with no agenda.
Oh man, that's so hard, but it's beautiful when
there's
it happens.
sometimes when, like you can share your crap with an agenda to move people for, right?
Yeah,
sure. Yeah.
Sure.
But when you're able to share your crap with no agenda, I think that's a turning point.
Because then it is gift.
Yeah.
Then your own story becomes gift.
Yes.
Yes. And that's...
I've had people tell me that.
You have to be so truthful, right? Truthful. Like no agenda, no, I'm shaping this story in a way that you're going to like or whatever. No, this is the truth about me.
Mm-hmm.
And then another person goes, oh, thank you.
Yeah.
There's full acceptance of that story. Well, now, wow, what a sense of, that's a holy, to me, I like that word, right? That's a holy moment because you feel deeply seen and loved as you are. And I think that's a gift we give to each other. But to outsource it, which I think is what is happening today in a lot of circles that we just mentioned, whether it's causes or groups, there's a tendency to outsource that sense. I'm looking for belonging somewhere and I'm going to find it somewhere out there, That's, I think, the problem we're dealing with today more so than anything else.
And that could be an alarm bell. If you are looking for belonging somewhere else, that might be your alarm bell to come back within.
Come back,
and find belonging in yourself first.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking of like moments where I feel like I've actually been able to access my best. And I did a gig a couple weeks ago. And, I'm the performer, right? I'm up in front, but it's this noisy bar. And like, it's always this thing for me. Can I get an entire bar of noisy people to go quiet and like just pull on them, like hang on? And it's like the only time I've successfully do that, and I did it in this week, it's because like I'm giving the gift of belonging the whole thing. I'm like telling you belong. The stories I share, it's like welcoming us to like have a shared space together. And then people are communicating and telling each other stories afterwards. Yeah. Like a crappy job is when someone walks up and they tell me, they're talking to me how great the music was or your guitar playing or your singing was. A good one is they come up and they tell me a story of their own based on something they heard.
Me.
Yes.
When they come up and share their own story, that is when you've really succeeded in creating the gift of, in giving the gift of belonging and creating an invitation, because the gift of the belonging always has an invitation to it. It's always inviting someone to the party.
Yeah. More of you.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's an invitation that says, come home.
Yeah.
That's what belonging does.
Yes.
That's what the gift of belonging does. It says, come home. Yep. Come home to yourself because yourself is welcome here.
But isn't that the reason why the word home is so rich in meaning? It's so deep. It's because it includes that sense of belonging. Yeah.
When someone says it feels like home to me.
Welcome home.
Yeah. It's belonging.
Yeah.
So thanks for listening in. And we would also like to hear from you. If you are signed up for our newsletter, you're going to get a newsletter this week asking you to send a recording in. And we're going to collect stories from the recordings that people send in and use them for a new podcast season. So keep an eye out for that newsletter coming later this week. There is not much time left to sign up for the certification program starting in January. So you can go to our website, theartofgrowth.org, to sign up for that, or reach out to us if you have questions about it. But for now, my friends, let us lean into considering the implications of these life pillars of identity, belonging, and contribution, and what we can bring to the table as we become the light and then we offer it to the world around us. The true us that is not an imitation of anyone else, because it is your uniqueness that is the contribution and not your capacity to be like anyone else. And that is something to remember this week, my friends. Grace and growth.